So hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Hormone Cafe. And I'm so delighted to have my amazing, and I am now going to call her a friend, Jolanta A Addicott, who has been my go-to hormone specialist as I have been traversing my menopause transition. But she doesn't just work with us at menopause. Jolanta is able to work with you at all ages and all phases. So Jolanta's a registered pharmacist and nutritionist with over 30 years experience. And that for me was why I always knew I was in safe hands. She is a menopause health expert and empowers women to transition through perimenopause, that 10 to 15 years before we meet that day, and menopause with ease by helping them to understand what is going on in their body at these stages and the key hormones to nurture. And that is why I have invited her today to come and talk to us about nourishing and looking after your estrogen bucket. And then Jolanta's going to explain a lot more. So as I've said, in this very short webinar, Jolanta's going to be discussing and explaining how important it is for every woman, wherever your age, wherever you are in your life cycle, to look after this all-important estrogen bucket. So Jolanta, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mari. What a fabulous introduction. Thank you. And I'm always delighted to chat with you and to your audience. So first of all, why did I choose the topic of talking about the estrogen bucket when you asked me for a topic title? You know, the estrogen bucket, and I didn't really know what an estrogen bucket was until my 40s. And I'd been practicing pharmacy for so many years. They didn't teach us these things at university. And what I want to share today, it's important for females of all ages, you know, teenage girls, women's in their 20s, 30s, 40s, whether they want to have children or not, women transitioning through perimenopause, the menopause, postmenopause, because even in postmenopause, you can be estrogen dominant.
Yeah.
You know, and all those estrogen dominant symptoms, fatigue, headaches, weight gain, depression, low mood, low libido, bloating, acne, all symptoms. Is it low estrogen? Is it high estrogen? Estrogen is the Goldilocks hormone. You don't want too little, you don't want too much. And actually, I think what I have to share today is also important for any woman who has chosen to be on HRT. HRT is a wonderful thing. But what I find in my clinic is that when women start to experience symptoms of hormonal imbalances going through menopause, they go on to HRT, everything is fabulous, they feel so much better. And then some way down the line, could be a year, could be a bit longer, could be less, I get a phone call from them and they say, do you know what? I'm not feeling great. You know, I thought this HRT was working, and all of a sudden, all my original symptoms have come back.
Yeah.
And this is usually because we need to address the estrogen bucket. Maybe all that estrogen that's going into the body isn't being detoxed and cleared from the body appropriately.
Yeah. Can I just say, and we did say that, you know, I would sort of be jumping in and out a little bit, and in a moment I'll pin you so that we can really see what you've got to share. I think that is such a key point to make, as you said, about, you know, HRT. You know, I think all of us now have a very different perspective on HRT through, you know, updating ourselves, you know, new methodology, new knowledge, new wisdom, looking at the research in different ways, etc., etc. And definitely for me, you know, as I've started using HRT 4 years post-menopause, one of the things I'm very aware of as someone who historically was always quite estrogen dominant was making sure that I'm keeping these detox pathways nice and clear, and I'm not just putting a sticking plaster on and not talking about lifestyle as well. And I was at a talk, I did a talk at the weekend, and of course now the first question is, shall I or shan't I go on on HRT? And my answer always is, every woman is, it's your own story, it's your own decision. Make it wisely, be an informed consumer, but don't ignore all the lifestyle tweaks and nuances that we need to be making. So I will be quiet for a while. I'm just going to put you on pin, Jolanta, so that we can see your
yeah, I've got a little bit of a whiteboard, but I'm going to make this really simple. It's not going to be all scientific.
So I will now be quiet and I will hand over to you.
Thanks, Mari. Okay, so the body makes 3 different types of estrogen. The E1. Now, E1 is predominantly produced when we are postmenopausal. We've got E2, sorry, where's my hand? E2, which is predominantly produced when a woman is menstruating. Now, the 2 are interchangeable. So E1 can make E2. And then E3 is predominantly, it's a more gentler, softer estrogen, and it's predominantly made when a woman is pregnant. Now, there are various things that can influence this production. So first of all, we've got all those chemicals. So whether that is your environmental toxins, the PBA, the phthalates, the parabens, the benzoates, whether that is the hormones in food, meat produce, dairy produce, pesticides, insecticides, mold toxins. So if you've got any mold in your home, you really need to get rid of that, or maybe invest in a dehumidifier, because even the mold toxins, the mycotoxins, can act as xenoestrogen, so they mimic estrogen in the body. GMO foods like corn and soy, they can also have these effects on estrogen production, as can heavy metals, whether that's arsenic, mercury. And what can also happen is these hormones called the androgens, such as testosterone is an androgen hormone. These, via an enzyme, via a process called aromatization, can also be converted into estrogen. So there's many things going into that initial estrogen bucket. And when this estrogen has the effect on the body and it's done its job, the majority of it will get shunted into the liver. And then the liver has to break this estrogen down, so it detoxes it, but it doesn't detox it into a neutral compound. It detoxes that estrogen into active estrogens. And so there are various enzymes involved. And just for simplicity, I'm going to call it the green, the red, and where's my hand going? The blue. So science has shown us that in order for us to remain healthy and have our hormones, estrogen, balanced, we want to sort of aim that our body, or our liver, or the liver enzymes, are producing about 60 to 80% of the green estrogen, no more than 10% of the red. The red is really naughty. If we have too much of this red estrogen, it can really damage DNA. And then for the blue estrogen, again, we don't want too much, under 30%, ideally, because again, it can be naughty. It really binds to the estrogen receptors in the breast tissue. So too much of it can be proliferative.
Can I just ask you, Jolanta, when you're saying that these naughty compounds are binding to the receptors, what does that mean for somebody who might not understand that?
So basically, they have this attraction to the docking station, say in the breast. But you know, there's estrogen receptors or docking stations all over the body, you know, in the brain, in the muscles, in and bones, I mean, all over. So obviously for estrogen, it docks onto that station, and then it exerts its effect, whether that's a good effect or a bad effect. And so these pathways, and if you've ever had a Dutch test done with me, you'll know the different colors and the different pathways and how we can manipulate those pathways so that your body is predominantly detoxing estrogen down the green pathway. So a few examples that can shift this detox pathway, things like cruciferous vegetables. So that's your broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, bok choy, rocket, watercress, radishes, cauliflower. So those are all those cruciferous vegetables. And I'd be recommending about a cup of one of those every day. Berries can really help to shift this, as can milled flax seeds. A little bit of caffeine, not too much, but a little bit can be really beneficial. Rosemary. Rosemary is a wonderful herb to cook with, to drink rosemary tea, to really help with that detox pathway. Exercise. So if we lead a sedentary lifestyle, we're going to be looking at higher levels of the red and the blue. So exercise is important to shift to the green estrogen. And so what really drives these two pathways, the red and the blue estrogen? Excess sugar, excess alcohol, certainly those toxic omega-6 oils. So we're talking about sunflower, safflower, canola, corn oil, because they produce a lot of inflammation in the body. And also the oral contraceptive pill. So certainly for younger women that are still taking the pill, you need to watch these pathways and be aware and put the right measures into place to give your liver, give your body the maximum support to break all this estrogen down. And then what happens is, when these three estrogens have been produced in the body, or shall I say detox, but you know, they're still active, there's another biochemical process called methylation. And this methylation will produce some other estrogen. And then what tends to happen, methylation, if I can explain it in a simple way, it's like all of this all of these 6 estrogens, imagine you're in a room, these 6 estrogens are dotted around the room as, I don't know, rubbish on the floor. And so you go in, methylation, you go in, you sweep it all up into one pile, you sweep it into the dustpan, and you put it in the bin. And then that bin of all these different estrogens goes into the gut. And then in the gut, we have obviously got the gut bacteria known as the estrobolome, which can, it manages our estrogen levels. So there's a variety of different bugs in the estrobolome, and they produce something called betaglucoronidase, and it's the betaglucoronidase that can wreak a bit of havoc on this bin. So basically, if we've got a lot of this betaglucoronidase, which means that our gut bacteria are imbalanced, basically, sorry, that's my light just fell. Obviously, doesn't like the betaglucoronidase.
Absolutely, it's wreaking havoc. It's just giving a bit of dramatic effect.
Hey ho. So what happens is this betaglucoronidase, again, I'm going to explain it really simply, opens the lid of the bin and shakes it all out. So it shakes all those estrogens out, and then that estrogen is going to get absorbed back into the body. And then, you know, you're back, you're going to have all this estrogen coursing around your body, and most probably estrogen dominant symptoms, which again can mimic estrogen deficient symptoms. So there are certain bacterial species that can really help to keep a lid on this beta-glucuronidase. So that's the Bifidobacteria. We're looking at Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus rhamonus, Lactobacillus reuteri, and I can jot these down in the comments after the video. And so basically, you know, these bacterial species are going to thrive if we are giving them the right fuel. So your veggies, you know, Dr. Tim Spector of the guy who founded Zoe, he talks about trying to introduce 30 different plant foods into your diet, and some of them grains and some of them are fruits, but the majority, at least 20 of them, should be veggies. So this is what is going to make these wonderful bacteria flourish and keep that estrobolome and beta-glucuronidase in check, in order, because the whole idea is we want that bin with the lid on to be basically excreted. So you're going to poo it out.
Yeah. And so basically what I'm hearing you say is we all need to eat more vegetables from the top down, from the whole process through. All I'm hearing is we need to eat more vegetables. And as you said, we're talking about the cruciferous, we're talking about the green leafies, we're not talking about more chips and, you know, and potatoes and mash. Not that there's anything wrong with any of them, but they should be at the lower end. In the same way, I think when we, you know, obviously I think it's now, is it now 7 portions of fruit and veg a day, or it used to be 5? I always used to say to my clients, it should be vegetables and fruit, not fruit and vegetables, because I think a lot of us eat a lot of fruit thinking we've hit our fruit and veg quota for the day, and actually we need to be eating much more vegetables. Then I would look at berries, then a little bit of, you know, mango or pineapple as a little bit of an accompaniment rather than the main course.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's really, really important because we want all this detoxed estrogen to leave the body. I would urge any woman that's watching this, if you know, if you're constipated, that needs to be resolved, because obviously you're gonna have this bin all with all these different estrogens sitting in your gut, and if you don't have a bowel motion for say 3, 4, 5 days, it's just sitting there, and the chances are that again that bin lid is going to be lifted out, and all that estrogen is going to be reabsorbed back
And I know
into
we're
the
doing this
body.
from a hormone perspective for women, but also I'm assuming that any man that's constipated, because men still do have estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, if they're constipated, that might be why we're then seeing a little bit of moobs coming on, or, you know, belly and all those other, you know, hormonal imbalances that we see in men of all ages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, these are important principles really for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah. And so, you know, just going back to, you know, the menopausal woman, you know, especially, for example, if she's on any medication, you know, once the aches and pains strike, you know, medication is crucial in some instances, but especially for women that might be on these codeine based painkillers, etc.,
Mm.
that is going to really, and I'm actually going to go on to this, so what affects your estrobolome, but certainly a lot of these medications, especially with codeine, are going to really wreck your gut microbiome, and it's going to sort of really diminish those bacteria that keep that betaglucoronidase in check. Other things that will affect your estrobolome, I mean, there is genetics. You know, your diet, again, we're looking at variety, we're looking at fiber, especially from veggies, alcohol intake. Alcohol will pretty much change the composition of your gut microbiome. And then we're back to environmental exposure, all those chemicals I mentioned at the beginning. Um, and if you have a course of antibiotics, again, antibiotics are very necessary for certain conditions. But I'd always say if you're having a course of antibiotics, or you need a course of antibiotics, take a probiotic, not at the same time, but take a probiotic throughout. And you'll probably need to take it for a good 3 months
Yeah.
after the course of your
So what
antibiotic.
you were saying there, because I get asked that question a lot, is you can take your probiotic on the same day, just not at the same time. So I always
Exactly.
used to use a rule of thumb of about 2 hours apart.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And I used to
Exactly.
say whatever amount of time you've been taking your antibiotic for, triple it to be taking your probiotic. But obviously you're sort of saying maybe even a bit longer if you've taken
Three
them
months.
3 months.
3 months.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of studies now coming out showing that even if we took a course of antibiotics 2 years ago, we are still feeling the adverse effects
Yeah.
in our gut microbiome, in our estrobolome. And if a woman comes to me and says, do you know what? I'm completely overwhelmed. I can't make a lot of changes in my diet or lifestyle. You know, a good quality probiotic is you know is a really good idea. So the things that a woman needs to be looking for if she wants to purchase a probiotic, just to take, not necessarily if she's had antibiotics or not, just to really nurture her estrobolome and
Mm.
help with our estrogen detox. So it must contain Bifidobacterium, Lactobacillus acidophilus, Lactobacillus rhamonus, and Lactobacillus reuteri, as well as probably a whole variety of other species. But those are probably the most important
Yeah.
to keep that estrogen balanced. And so we're also looking at fermented foods, a bit of sauerkraut, maybe kimchi, maybe kefir, maybe the odd glass of kombucha, asparagus, garlic, artichokes, banana. These are all like prebiotics for our estrobolome. It's like that rocket fuel that's going to help them to sort of start growing. So the other thing that can really affect this estrobolome is stress.
Mm.
Any sort of stress can really start to deplete our gut of those really necessary bacteria to control the beta-glucuronidase. But not only that, but stress also, especially once a woman is transitioning through menopause and beyond, when the ovaries sort of retire from making estrogen and progesterone and the adrenal glands take over. And the adrenal glands also produce cortisol. So again, managing your stress. I mean, we can't get away from stress. But managing your stress. Now, whether you choose some lifestyle things, or you might want to actually choose some herbs, whether that be ashwagandha, saffron, rhodiola, ginseng, and you might need to be a bit of a guinea pig and try different formulations before you hit on the one that really helps you, because estrogen dominance, estrogen and progesterone should be in a nice ratio. And if estrogen goes up, say, to 4, and your progesterone goes to a 1, that's going to produce all those estrogen dominant symptoms that are pretty much very similar to estrogen deficient symptoms.
Yeah. And I think the thing a lot of people don't understand or appreciate is, as you're going through that perimenopause and menopause transition, exactly as you said there, Jolanta, your estrogen can still be low, but if your progesterone is low, it's always, I always say, mind the gap. It's always about the gap, isn't it? So you can be low estrogen and estrogen dominant because it's about the ratio with that progesterone. And that I think can feel like you've got to get your head around it. But fundamentally, if we then start looking at lifestyle and how we can manage our stress, remembering that stress can be overtraining, undereating, too much busyness, doing too much almost of all the things that you love to do with like no rest and recovery. I'm sorry if I'm jumping in over what you were saying.
No, it's fine.
Yeah,
absolutely. And something that's really become apparent to me over the last few months, there is this craze for intermittent fasting. And I know I've posted lots of things on intermittent fasting on my own social media. And it can really work for some women, but if you are stressed, it's probably not a good idea. Probably the best fasting you can do is a 12-hour overnight fast. If you finish eating your evening meal by 7 p.m, start eating again at 7 a.m. in the morning. That is probably the safest, gentlest intermittent fasting for your body.
Yeah, and that's definitely, I'll just bring us off pin so that we can actually talk to each other. Unless, is there anything else you need to say about your beautiful diagram, which is really
no, nothing about this.
Yeah. And so I think, you know, that was me. I was like, you know, I'm not losing the weight. I'm showing that classic menopause from under the diaphragm to above the pubic bone, sort of like a little bit of pregnant, you know, I'm looking pregnant. I was adrenally dysregulated, as we know. And just to explain, the Dutch test is a dry urine test that Jolanta can do for you so that you can understand all of your pathways. But it's so much more. For me, it was a real eye-opener as to where I was deficient. My cortisol levels had flatlined. My adrenals weren't communicating properly. And again, that comes from years and years and years of living with stress. And some of that was emotional, some of it was physical, and some of it was mental. And I was trying intermittent fasting, and it just completely discombobulated me. My blood sugars went all over the place. I wasn't sleeping. Therefore, I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't regenerating. Everything just basically went out of the window. And I think the key thing for me, this is my story, is 3 good meals a day and maybe a snack in the middle. But definitely once I've had my evening meal, there is no more eating until the following morning. And that helps to balance my blood sugars. And hopefully now I've come through some of the stress, I'm going to start to see my body responding in a certain way. And I'm not looking to be the skinny size 8. I just know there's an element of where I'm carrying some of my body fat. So I'm not worried about my weight as such, but where my body fat is distributed isn't necessarily heart healthy.
Yeah.
And again, if our pathway, you know, estrogen's really heart protective, it's really brain protective. So
bone protective.
Yeah. So what I've loved about what you're sharing there, and what I love about all of this, is the science behind it. But fundamentally, we're always being told, aren't we? Eat more vegetables, reduce your stress, look after your gut health, and particularly and your liver health. And I think you've explained really beautifully about the alcohol, because I think that's the bit a lot of people don't get it, don't understand, but you shared that really beautifully. So thank you.
You're welcome. I'm just looking down at my notes to see if we've missed anything. So, yeah, I think I've touched upon everything. And so, you know, anyone that listening to this might think, gosh, there's a lot of information there. You've mentioned a lot of foods. How can I make this really simple? So what's one thing that everybody could put into or start actioning? So, for example, if you've got a blender and you enjoy smoothies, maybe treat your body to 1 smoothie a day. Now, when I say smoothie, I'm not talking about a fruit smoothie, you know. So I'm talking about, you want about 2 cups of veg. You can go for romaine lettuce. You could go for spinach, rocket, watercress. You could put in your cold but cooked from the previous night's dinner broccoli or kale. Now I say cooked because I know that when women transition through menopause, a lot of women need thyroid support, and the thyroid doesn't like uncooked cabbage, broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts, etc. So ideally cooked. And then what I would say is, you know, add some nuts, such as maybe macadamia, walnuts, maybe some milled linseeds, chia seeds. I like to put a good teaspoon of cinnamon, because cinnamon really regulates blood sugar. It can control those sugar cravings. Again, sugar cravings, estrogen dominant and estrogen deficient symptom. And then to sweeten, add up to 1 cup of a fruit. So whether that's your mixed berries, whether that's a banana, and then to that you can add protein powder or collagen or whatever you like to take. Now that is a really nutritious way of nurturing your estrogen bucket, because you've got ingredients in there. You've got lots of fiber, you've got a bit of cruciferous veg, you've got the greens, you've got the oils from the nuts, the protein. And if you don't like smoothies, maybe a salad, one of those Buddha bowls. Again, with a different variety of veggies. And in the winter, you might want to get that slow cooker out, and do all those veggie casseroles with whatever protein that you like.
And I love the fact that you're saying start with like maybe one smoothie or a soup or something, because that's like 1/3 of your meals already changed. And also, just a bit of a caveat for everybody, please don't rush out tomorrow if you are only eating, like a little bit of iceberg lettuce as your only vegetables, and start piling in 30, because you will have digestive upset in the other way and then think, this is ridiculous, it doesn't work. So we're building up to.
You want to go slow.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You want to go slow. And for some women that can't even can't make those changes for whatever reasons, say, I had a client in my clinic a few weeks ago, and really busy lady. She's got a lot going on, and she does rely a lot on takeout food and ready meals. And I said to her, okay, if the only thing you can do, get yourself a bag of rocket leaves or rocket and watercress mixed, or get 2 bags, pop them in your fridge. And then if you're having pizza, you're having your whatever your meal is, just have that with 2 handfuls of rocket.
That's always
is gonna make a difference. It is going to help to balance your estrogen.
That's always been my thing. We'd order the Chinese takeaway, but instead of rice, we'd be cooking broccoli, spears, and asparagus. So by the time it was delivered, we had some steamed veggies and the Chinese takeaway, and it was just so. I totally, It's those little things, isn't it? When people think, because we don't want to be overwhelming anyone and adding to their stress.
Exactly.
But I love that. Put some rocket over it, or eat a bit of rocket beforehand.
Yeah, absolutely. The other day on the Saturday, we had fish and chips from our local chippy, but I made sure that I'd prepped some broccoli and some carrots and some, just normal peas, not mushy peas, to add some fiber to that meal.
Yeah, no, and that's what I love about us. We're both on the same page, and you add this extra nuance of, really knowing in depth the science, but also being able to test and explain and share that. So is there anything else about loving and looking after our estrogen bucket that you need to share today, Jolanta?
No, I think that's everything.
Yeah. And I suppose, and again, what I love about today's session is people have heard me talking about, you've got to look after your gut health, you've got to look after your liver health, and you've just given the why and the science behind it, so it doesn't just sound like
in a very basic way.
Absolutely.
I mean, I could talk about this for an hour, as you well know, Mari. There's a lot more to this.
Well, if anybody does want to talk to you about it for an hour, how do they find you? Because there will be somebody.
So I don't know if we can pop some links to my website.
Absolutely.
And I often get women coming to me and saying, Jolanta, can you help me figure out what's going on in my body? And this is where the Dutch test comes in, the dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. And what that will do is it's going to give us your values of your E1, E2, E3. It's going to show us what your liver is doing with the green, red, the blue. Is there something we need to address there? It will show us what's happening with your methylation. And then obviously we have a conversation about the gut. I mean, the Dutch test shows a lot of other markers as well. Melatonin, your adrenals, what's happening with those stress hormones. And what I have actually done now, sorry, this is a bit of
No, go
self-promotion.
for it. Absolutely.
I've realized that women want different entry levels to the Dutch testing. So I have different entry levels depending on the amount of support or the amount of interpretation that you want.
Okay.
So basically it starts at £300. But it does jump up depending on how much support that you want. But if you just want to check this and maybe have a written report, I've tried to keep it as low cost as possible.
And I think that's really good, because you might want to go for the top level to start with if this is all really new for you. But as we're constantly changing, so, I've had 2 done so far. But maybe when I come to do my 3rd one in a year's time, because I've sort of, put about 2 or 3 years between them, then I can just get the entry level, because I now know to go and look straight away at my little circles of green, red, and blue. I've always managed to be in the green, but, the last time we were a little bit close. We could have done with more green, and, I've changed some stuff up and putting stuff into place. But I think it's really important to recognize that, we're constantly evolving and constantly changing. So you might want entry, the top level, and then you might, in a few years' time, just to be checking in and seeing how everything is doing. So that's
or the other way around.
yeah.
A woman might want to just go for basic entry level, and
Yeah.
depending on what the results show,
Mm.
she can then decide, do I need to now upgrade this to have some extra support?
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. So we will pop all your links below so that people can find you on social media, your website, all the usual places. But thank you so much for your time today. Thank you
No,
for
thank
sharing
you, Mari. It's a
your
pleasure.
expertise so simply. And for all of you listening, please share your comments and your feedback below, and maybe share with us the one thing that you're going to do to help to support and nourish your estrogen bucket with love. So thank you so much, and we will see you all again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.